Everybody, my name is Janice. I'm the marketing content coordinator over at Zing Credit Union. I do want to take some time out to thank everybody for being with us here this morning. And I do also want to give a special shout out to AgeWise Colorado for helping us put together this webinar in honor of Elder Abuse Awareness Month, which is this month in case a lot of people didn't know. But with that being said, I do want to give out some house rules. If you do have any questions, feel free to add them in the chat box and we'll answer them along the way or towards the end. Or if you also want to raise your little icon hand, we'll be happy to answer questions. If you do want to mute yourself, that way we're not interrupting other attendees, that would be great. But we'll go ahead and get started. With that being said, Barbara, I will pass that over to you.
Sarah, how are you?
Thank you. Hi, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I am not
I
good
saw
at-
that you called. It was like right in the
Do we
middle
know
of
who
the
this
concert.
is?
No. Let's see.
If everyone would mute, it would be greatly appreciated. And I will now share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Good, thank you. So today is Protecting Our Elders, Combating Abuse, Scams, and Fraud. And welcome to everyone. We really appreciate your participating with us. And that Zing Credit Union is bringing this to you. We appreciate their support. They've been members with us for some time, and they're a great organization. We have several people on that will be participating with us to inform you and educate you. And that's Mark, and Stephen. Stephen, there you are, Stephen. You're at the top. I'm looking at two screens, so bear with me, folks. And they will introduce themselves and talk to you about all that they know. We do ask that you stay on mute, that you turn off your cameras. We want to remind you that we look for volunteers. We are all volunteers at AgeWise. We are doing this as a public service to connect people to all of the services and potential products they may need. As such, we are a nonprofit and contributions are greatly appreciated. And so you can see this is our website. We hope you'll join us. And we welcome your comments when you go to the website. Anything you can't find or that you found and appreciate, we'd love to hear from you. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen. Oops. If I can figure out how to do that. And turn it over to Morrow. And I'm sorry, give me one more minute here to turn this off. I'm not doing well, Mara. Why don't you start and I'll get myself off here somehow.
It's okay. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Mauro Kasparian with the Denver District Attorney's Office. I am the Director of Community Engagement, and as part of that, I do outreach and provide presentations about how to protect yourself from fraud and scams. As this is Elder Abuse Awareness Month, and the elder abuse awareness really focuses on abuse of older citizens, but fraud and scams are also an abuse. And we all talk about fraud and scams, so I'm just kicking this off with some just general statements. One of the things that I like to say at the beginning of all my talks is that I'm assuming that all of you who are listening and are on this call Either whether you're retired or you're currently working, you're good at your job, or you were good at your job. And it's important to know that scammers are good at their job. It's what they do for a profession. So when folks sit back and say, how can anyone be so stupid to fall for a scam? I want to assure you and assure your ego and embarrassment that people get scammed all the time. Smartest people in the world get scammed. Think about Bernie Madoff's folks that he scammed out of hundreds of thousands of dollars, very smart people. So one of the things that a lot of us in this type of business hope that these types of seminars allow you all some relief if you have been scammed, that try not to be embarrassed, try not to let shame keep you from sharing the information, because it's only through sharing this information that other people realize that these things can happen. There are all sorts of scams. They're in categories of imposter scams, those people who are pretending to be something else. And I think you've probably heard, or you all may have gotten the, you haven't paid your back taxes, the IRS call, impersonator, they're impersonating someone else. And there are lots of those scams, the grandparent scam, impersonating your grandchild, saying I'm in Mexico and I just got pulled over and we need grandma, we need $1,000 to get out of jail. All those types of things. So these impersonators typically have been are typically outreaching and calling you. So number one, we're going to talk globally here. The number one thing is, if you do not expect a call from a company or a person, I would say, I generally say, if you're not expecting a call, if you don't know who's calling you on your cell phone, there's not a caller ID, don't answer the phone. Companies, the FTC, the IRS, warrants, there's a warrant out for your arrest. No one is going to call you and tell you that there's a warrant out for your arrest. So the IRS will not call you. So if a company is calling you and you are not expecting them, be suspicious. If you get that text from your credit union that says there's some activity, unusual activity on your account, click here. Don't click. And you all have heard this, I'm sure, over and over again. Don't click any links that you're not expecting. If you're curious or you're not expecting it, but you kind of want to click the link, call the company directly or call your person who sent it directly. Don't take the word of the email. Don't take the word of the person on the phone that they are who they are. It's your job to be cynical. It is perfectly fine if you end up answering the phone and you don't know who these people are. It's perfectly fine to hang up. It's not rude. It's appropriate. There's not a lot of things that we can do to keep people from calling. When people say I'm on the do not call list, that's a great thing to be on the do not call list. However, if you are getting calls and you are on the do not call list, 90% sure that it's a scammer calling you. Okay. If anybody, so again, I'm talking big global things. If anybody is telling you, in order for anything to happen, in order for me to fix your computer, that I just saw this virus and I'm calling from Microsoft and you have a virus on your computer, like as if it's this Microsoft God in the sky able to look at everybody's computers. That doesn't happen. But if they contact you and it sounds so real because they're good at their job, they're also going to ask you to pay. Pay and scams go together. So if some stranger or a company even that you're working with is saying you must pay by Bitcoin, you must pay by an iTunes card or a gift card, that is your red flag. Never, ever believe anyone who says you have, in order for me to help you get off your warrant or get your computer working, you have to go and get a gift card and pay. That's a scam. And I'm sure many of you are sitting there right now saying, how can that happen? How can people be so stupid? The number one tactic that a professional scammer uses is fear. And because I'm in the district attorney's office, I work in law enforcement a lot, work with law enforcement agencies, and we are one as well. And fear is the number one thing that we know in the world of law enforcement, people react differently when they are in fear. When you go, oh no, my grandson is in Mexico, kidnapped. Or, oh no, I didn't pay my back taxes. That's fear. And if your initial reaction is fear, I want you all to just stop what you're doing, because when you have fear, people are quick to react. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to avoid people reacting so quickly and without thinking that they accept whatever the scammer's saying to be truth. Mark, you want to take it from here too?
I would love to. Thanks, Mauro. I appreciate that. And my name is Mark Futterhoff. I am the program manager for AARP ElderWatch. And what I'm going to do is build upon some of the concepts that Mauro has been talking about and talk about some of the things we're hearing specifically from older Coloradans on our ElderWatch helpline. And so I'm going to attempt to share my screen just for a second here. I just have a few slides. I promise not death by PowerPoint today. Can we see that? Thumbs up, anyone? Yes. Okay, perfect. So just for those of you who are not familiar with ElderWatch, it is a almost a 25-year partnership between AARP and the Colorado Attorney General's Office. And what we do is really try to educate older Coloradans about the different types of scams, many of which Mauro was just talking about, that are going on out there. And we do that in a couple different ways, in-person presentations and virtual presentations, obviously. And we have wonderful volunteers who help man our helpline. And we're taking lots and lots of calls about the different types of scams that people are hearing about all over the state of Colorado. And in addition to that, AARP has a National Fraud Watch Network helpline, and we are a big part of that as well here in Colorado. The base for the Fraud Watch Network helpline, national helpline, is also here in Colorado and has really been built upon by the work of ElderWatch. And on that line, we're taking over, between our two helplines, we're taking over 100,000 calls a year about different reports of the different types of scams that are happening out there. In addition to that, we're also doing some older adult financial literacy work as well. But what I want to talk about today is really those reports that are coming in directly from the older Coloradans who are calling us, and the different types of scams that we're hearing about on that helpline, and the different types of issues that older Coloradans are reaching out to us about. And so, number one, I'm not going to go into extreme detail on these, but I just want to give you a feel for kind of the types of things that we're hearing. So number one, and this was true for last year as well, identity theft, the most common type of issue that we're hearing about. And this happens a lot of different ways. I will tell you, a lot of the people who are calling us are concerned about data breaches. They're concerned about their information being out there. They're concerned that their credit score has gone down and something is going wrong. And so a lot of the times with different identity theft related issues, we're talking about kind of trying to diagnose those situations, and by checking your annual credit report and doing things like placing fraud alerts and credit freezes, so people can't do that type of a thing. And I'll talk just in another second about a little bit more about identity theft and a resource for that. Number two, imposter business scams, super common type of scam that we've been hearing about. I'll tell you that imposter business scams really have come to this point in our list because of Amazon. And scammers know that the Amazon name, there's a lot of people out there who are buying all their things from Amazon. And so they're using them and pretending to be Amazon by sending them text messages, emails, phone calls, different types of things, but just try to get their attention by again using the Amazon name. Obviously, there's lots of other types of imposter businesses that we hear about. I think PayPal is another one that I often hear about on our helpline as well. But again, knowing what type of communication these types of businesses send out and how to recognize if it is an actual communication from that business, I think is critically important. Mauro just talked a little bit about tech support and computer virus scams. Again, these scams have evolved over time and they really have become much more aggressive. And I think it's important to know too that these scammers, in the past, they were pretending to be Microsoft and they were trying to get $400 or $500 from people. Now their real goal, and I'm sure the folks at Zing Credit Union are seeing this as well, but these scammers are trying to get onto their computer and drain their bank accounts in different ways. And I think that it's important to know that you should not allow someone to access your especially unsolicited, to access your device. When I'm talking about device, I'm talking about computer, I'm talking about tablets, I'm talking about phones remotely, because it's very dangerous, especially if you do your banking online, to have someone who you don't know on your device and potentially trying to get all of your money out of your bank account. And we hear too many instances of this happening, so watch out for that. Phishing scams, this is often a catch-all for us in many ways, all the different types of phishing attempts that are out there. One of the most common types of phishing attempts we're seeing are via text message, again, trying to pose as especially a shipping entity like USPS, UPS, FedEx, saying package wasn't delivered. So watching out for those types of attempts. Again, the phishing, trying to get your personal and financial information. And really watching out again for what those communications look like and different red flags that it might be actually not the person who you expected or the business that you expected. Number 5 on this list, home repair and improvement scams. This happens in 2 different ways. Either the fly-by-night operation where someone is saying again that they can help you out, but you can give them money in advance and they'll come back and finish your fence job or your roof job or whatever it might be, and they just never show up. The majority of the ones that we hear about with home repair and improvement are really about folks who are having a disagreement with the contractor. And I'd say, doing your research in advance before hiring someone to do the work at your house is critically important so you don't end up in these situations. And so, getting referrals, getting multiple bids, doing online research on consumer review sites, that type of a thing, I think critically important so you don't end up in that situation. Number 6, online dating and romance scams. Again, these are probably some of the most lucrative scams that we hear about on our helpline, just because, again, and lucrative in many ways. I would say, that the scammers often get big chunks of money in these situations, but at the same time, it's devastating for the person who, believes that they also just lost the love of their life too. And so, again, unsolicited contacts, you do not have to be on Match.com to get involved in a romance scam. I think that's really critically important to remember. A lot of folks who get involved in these different types of scams, it started on Facebook and someone just reached out to them and started chatting with them. These are also starting over text messages. So if you get a random text message that says, "Hey, how's it going?" and you have no idea who it is, sometimes that's how scams start too. I'll tell you that I got one of these recently, and it said, it asked me if I was this person. My only response was no, like NO. And the next response was, "Oh, you're so kind to, answer my text. That's so sweet of you." And then I still didn't respond. I knew this, I know the ruse here, but sometimes I do play along just because that's my job. But at the same time, the next message was an invitation to dinner. And so, you know, I have no idea who this person is, who they're looking for, but all of a sudden they're inviting me to dinner. And I know there's more to the story than that, but again, I didn't continue to play along. So watch out for those attempts. Again, any unsolicited contact you get on Facebook or Instagram or even a text message there's a really good chance they're trying to develop a relationship with you, and that relationship means trying to get your personal and financial information and get your money. And that's not what we want. Number 7 on this list really does speak to World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which was June 15th. And I think, again, very important that we recognize World Elder Abuse Awareness Day and the different types of financial exploitation that are happening out there in the world. And that non-stranger exploitation is really kind of what we see when a family member, a caregiver, a neighbor is taking advantage of an older adult financially and taking their money. You know, in our world, a lot of the times those reports are going directly to Adult Protective Services. I think a lot of people don't know Adult Protective Services exists, and it's a really important resource to understand. Think of it as Child Protective Services, but really for older adults. If you're not familiar with that service out there, and now there's one in every county in Colorado. Imposter government scams. Mara was talking about this with regard to the IRS imposter scams. When I started this work 8 years ago, those imposter government scams were always number 1 on this list. They are not anymore. No, and she covered many of the ones that we hear about, but there are still scammers out there posing to be U.S. Treasury Department, Medicare, different types of Social Security administrators, that type of a thing. But also, I think some of the more tricky ones are coming from kind of the local government level, for people pretending to be local government officials, and as part of jury duty scams, that type of a thing. So really important to watch out for those. Sweepstakes, prize, and lottery scams. Again, these scams I have kind of crawled back onto our list. They kind of fell off for a couple of years. But again, the most critical part about this scam is it's really important that no one pays money to receive money, and that is the bright red flag of this scam. And if you get any type, again, the scammers in these situations are trying to prey on the hopes and dreams of their victims, and in that way, what they're really trying to do is again say, oh, and it's almost a gamble for these folks. They say, oh, you won $1.5 million and a new Mercedes. I just talked to a woman on our helpline today who said she had this scam attempt, but what she told them to do was they could put the check and the keys between her screen door. And that was kind of her. She knew it was a scam, but she said, just put it between my screen door. I'm not going to give you anything, but if you have those things for me, I'd be happy to take them. And so I appreciate that. In a lot of ways too. And then the last thing on our list that we get kind of calls about are issues with housing. And this is probably not a surprise for folks on this call or anyone who lives in Colorado. Cost of housing is expensive. We hear different types of landlord tenant issues, as well as folks who are having a hard time getting housing, or different types of scams around housing, rental scams, different even short-term rental scams as well. A couple of other things I just want to talk about real quick, kind of the top trends that we're seeing in scams in 2024. And again, that first one kind of goes along with what Mario was talking about with regards to tech support scams. Again, scammers are requesting access to your computer or phone, and they're doing this so they can try to get into your bank account, your credit union account, whatever it is you do in terms of online banking. Again, so never allow unsolicited contact to ask for your access to your computer. I know that there are many reputable computer support firms who are asking for access to your computer so they can help diagnose and fix a problem. But again, the difference there is that you are looking for someone, but also know that that many Google searches might result in a scammer who also is set up a website to make it look like they're a computer support person. So doing a bit of research about that and who you're engaging with to do your tech support work or solve any problems with your computer, critically important. Mara also mentioned the request for cryptocurrency as a form of payment. This is a bright red flag of a scam. And when you look at FTC reports in the last couple of years, the amount of money being lost as part of cryptocurrency related scams has just gone up. And so really understand that, again, the IRS is not requesting payment via cryptocurrency. Different types of businesses also not requesting payment via cryptocurrency. So if you're not familiar with it and someone tells you to go to a Bitcoin ATM or one of those Coinstar machines at King Soopers or Safeway, it's really important to know that you can purchase cryptocurrency at those points, and you should not be purchasing cryptocurrency at those points. We're hearing it way too much. Also, again, scammers are still requesting payment via gift card, as Mauro mentioned before, and peer-to-peer payment app. So again, peer-to-peer payment apps, Venmo, Zelle, Cash App should only be used for payment to people who you know, or someone who's doing your hair, or someone who you're splitting dinner with, that type of a thing as well. The third one there, offers for easy money. We're seeing this a lot right now too. I mentioned the sweepstakes. We're also hearing lots of different fake government grants that people are being offered on Facebook. We're hearing kind of employment opportunities. They're too good to be true. And so again, taking a step back with regards to cryptocurrency investments as well, lots of these. So, I think it's really important that especially a lot of the people who we're talking to who are older adults, you have a lot of experience out there, and it's important that you trust your gut. And if an offer seems too good to be true, it is. That. It's time to disengage. And the last two here, again, attempts to steal your identity. The number one resource that I use when I'm talking to people on our helplines is identitytheft.gov. It's the Federal Trade Commission's identity theft website. You can file a report on identitytheft.gov about your any type of identity theft related issues. In addition to that, you can also take reactive steps like checking your credit report, placing fraud alerts and credit freezes, and getting all the information for how to contact the credit reporting bureaus on that website. It's a really great site for all those resources with regards to identity theft. And then that bottom one, again, I kind of mentioned about some of the tricky text messages that are out there, but scammers know that people aren't answering the phone the same way they used to, and they're not checking their email and checking their spam the same way they used to. And so I think they move to text messages because they know that people talk with their friends via text message, and I'm going to see that text message when it comes through, and I have to make a conscious decision to avoid it. And so I think, again, really important that you're not engaging with people via text message who you don't know. Okay, sorry, that was my laundry list. And I will pass the baton on to Stephen with the FBI. Go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you, Mark. On that last note, I just want to mention with text messages, we often also see scammers moving the conversation from traditional text message to an app that you maybe have never used before, that you're unfamiliar with. That could be WhatsApp is a name of a text messaging app that is common. Telegram is another common one. So something like that, if someone's taking the conversation to a different platform that you've never used, that's another red flag. Mark, Mauro, thanks for all that great information. My name is Stephen Wilbanks. I'm a special agent with the FBI in Denver, and I work on the complex financial crimes division here. So I'm with law enforcement, and so what we do is we also hear about and get a lot of reports and tips from victims, but then we also get to go down the path of investigating and figuring out who these scammers are and what they're doing and why they're doing it and how to stop it. So I'm going to present my screen as well. So give me 1 second and let me know if you can see it. A thumbs up would be great. Okay, I see a couple head nods. Awesome. So you've now heard about some of the common scams and what we're seeing. Those are right in line with what the FBI sees as well. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the FBI is doing and some of the data we have behind it, and talk about that for a minute. One of the main things I want to share today is a website called IC3.gov. So that stands for the Internet Crime Complaint Center. So that's the IC3 part. And what this is it's two things. One, it's a place you can report a tip or a complaint. So if you have been the victim of a scam, this is another resource that you can submit that to, and this goes directly to the FBI, and the FBI shares this across local and state law enforcement as well. And so it's a really useful database for us. So what happens is if you get scammed out of $1,000 here or there, that may not be a case that the FBI is going to take. Even though $1,000 is a lot to me, that may not be a case the FBI works. But what the FBI might realize is if you submit it here, they might realize we have 500 reports from the same phone number that texted you and then scammed you out of the money, or the same email address. And we get to connect the dots and then kind of work a bigger case based on that. So I wanted to share this, and I'll talk about some of the data that we have from last year in it as well. But if you don't remember anything from my part of the presentation, remember ic3.gov as a place that you can go to report. And then also there's resources that talk about the common scams and kind of the red flags and things like that. So if you're curious about this and you want to read more about what we're talking about today, this is another useful resource. I always want to say, if you're in an emergency, if you feel threatened, if you feel unsafe, please call 911. Don't submit to ic3.gov. Pick up the phone and call 911. So a little data from our IC3 database from last year. So this is not, if you call your local police department, if you call Denver PD and report fraud to them, IC3 does not get that. So this is not necessarily every fraud in the country, but this is what was reported through IC3. And then we do get to share that with the local law enforcement partners as well. So if you look over here, the gray bar is the number of complaints. So that top gray or blue bar is going to be the number of complaints received. So what we're seeing over 5 years is about almost twice as many complaints are coming in through IC3. And IC3 is pretty specific to fraud and electronic device scams, things like that. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. I want to highlight in 2023 at the bottom, right? 880,000 reports were submitted through IC3. So almost always that's a victim or maybe even a friend of a victim who maybe is seeing something happen and wants to share that with law enforcement. So 880,000 tips or complaints came in, reports came in. And of that, for losses of $12.5 billion. So this is a massive industry, right? Fraudsters and scammers are making a lot of money. And so as Mauro explained from the beginning, they're really good at their jobs. They're very sophisticated. They're really good. We usually estimate that this is a fraction, those numbers, the 12.5 billion and the 880,000 is a fraction of the actual fraud that's happening in America. And it's because a lot of people don't report it. They feel shame, they feel like guilt as if it's their fault, and they think for some reason they don't want to report it. So we want to make sure we tell you today that if this is happening to you, you're a victim. You've been victimized. Someone's taking advantage of you, and they're really sophisticated, and anybody can fall for it, and they know what they're doing. So please report. It helps a lot. Like I said, the FBI in particular is trying to connect all the dots on some pretty big networks that are out there. And so it really helps when you submit a report to us through IC3 so we can connect those dots. The other part I wanted to highlight on the right is just a little piece of it locally, right? So in Colorado, we can see that of that 12.5 billion of losses in 2023, 187 million of that came from Coloradans. So, it's right here, and it's something that is impacting us in this state significantly. This is a breakdown of the IC3 data. So that 12.5 billion in 2023, you can see it by the type of scam that Mark described a minute ago. Investment scam is going to be often like someone's pitching an investment opportunity for you, says, hey, 5%, I'm getting 5% returns every month, or I'm getting, 200% return every year. You've got to invest with me. Send the money and I'll put it in the account and you'll make a ton of money. That's the biggest type of scam we see. I want to highlight, the tech support one. So Mark talked about that one. It's huge. Happens all day, every day. And then confidence and romance. That's a really big one too. So Mark mentioned that that's a lucrative one. And so because of that, the FBI often gets involved with those. So I'm out and about very often in the Denver area, in the Aurora area, in the greater Denver area, meeting with victims and actually usually the first one to tell them, hey, that person you've been texting for the last couple of years and who you've sent a couple $100,000 to is not who you think it is. And it's really, you know, maybe they even are using AI and they're using fake pictures and fake video calls sometimes. That's a really sophisticated one, but we do see that. And it's really devastating to have to go talk to somebody who thinks they're in a romantic or friendship, trusted relationship with somebody that they've known for oftentimes many years, and they've sent a significant amount of money that they're never going to get back. So I just want to highlight that one as well.
Mark, can I interrupt you for a second? Would you
Sure.
remind us what BEC stands for?
I can do that, or Mark can do it. I'm Stephen, but yeah, I'm happy to
I'm
talk
sorry, Stephen.
No, that's okay. I'll mention it because it's on my slide, but it's a business email compromise. And so what that means is we see this in the business world a lot. And in real estate a lot. So you're in the middle of a transaction, you're closing on a house, you've got a deal going on, and you're in the final stages. All you really need to do at the end is wire some money, the down payment, something like that. And you get the email you're expecting. And it says, you know, hey, you know, you're ready to submit your final payment to close the deal. Here's the wiring instructions, and it's over email, and it looks pretty legit. So you send the money. You just send it to wherever they said, and a few days later, a few weeks later, the actual company you were supposed to send money to calls you and said, hey, why didn't you ever send me the money? Basically, what happened is somebody else sent you a phishing email or a spoofed email, an email that looked like the person or the company that you were supposed to be doing a deal with, and they sent you that email and kind of intercepted your communications, often because one of the emails or networks that you're working on with company or a different company, it's compromised already. So somebody is actually reading those emails and following along. And in the last moment, when they know it's time to make the payment, they swoop in and redirect where the payment goes. It's a really big problem because it's usually big transactions that are taking place. And I think actually on my next slide, I think I have some information to share on that. So did that make sense real quick?
Yeah.
That explanation make
Thank
sense?
you. We had a question in the chat about that.
Oh, okay, thanks. I guess to summarize, and then I'll follow up on that next comment. So IC3, like I said, ic3.gov, it allows us to investigate the crime. It allows us to make the connections between lots of crimes. We can track trends and threats, so we see what the latest scams are. We see what's emerging, so we can hopefully stay ahead of it, or at least respond to these things. And then, like I said, we get to share this with other law enforcement partners who might work it as well. And then the last part is, if you submit a complaint through IC3, and a lot of times we can actually take action where we can freeze the funds. So in that last example where I talked about the BEC, the business email compromise. So you send a wire and you realize a day later, you send it to the wrong account. Somebody got in there and convinced you to send it to the wrong place. Depending on the timing of how soon that transaction occurred, how recent that transaction was, if you submit a report to IC3, we have a team that is actually immediately actioning that to freeze those funds. I can talk more about that. So that's going to be called the IC3 Recovery Asset Team. So basically, with wire payments, this is usually only true for wires between bank accounts. But if you submit a report to IC3 and it says, hey, in the last 24 hours, in the last 48 hours, in the last maybe 72 hours, this payment went through and it was unauthorized, or it was, we got tricked and it went to the wrong account. IC3 and our team here with the FBI actually has people who are sitting, watching, and waiting for those reports, and immediately contacts the associated bank and kind of starts the process of freezing those funds and stopping that transaction. It is not guaranteed. It is, unfortunately, sometimes narrow in scope. It has to be within a really quick time frame. But we do like to tell people about that because a lot of people don't know that we do have the ability to stop some of those transactions before they're fully completed. One other resource that I think is a cool part of our team here at the FBI that I want to talk about is our virtual currency response team. So cryptocurrency, it's a big thing right now. It's confusing, it's complicated, and scammers love it. It's a quick way to get money out of the United States, which is often where these scammers are. It doesn't have to go through the banks in the traditional way. And in some ways, it's a little less regulated. And so it is a way that they think they can conceal their identity or move money faster, things like that. Some of that stuff is true. I'm also here to tell you today that cryptocurrency is not anonymous. It's not this, thing that is untouchable by law enforcement. We do have teams of really smart individuals working on cryptocurrency transactions and cases constantly, all day, every day. And we're able to trace, we're able to track, we're able to follow through the blockchain. If you've ever heard of it, we can actually follow it because it's all out there on the blockchain. And so often, I don't want to guarantee this. It's not a guarantee either, and this is contingent on a lot of things, but we are able to freeze and then recover cryptocurrency transactions that are made too. So if at some point, you find yourself accidentally involved in a scam or a fraud, or you're a victim of one, and there's money going through crypto, we still want to know about that. We still want to work it. We still want to see if we can help, and we often can. Those were the main points I wanted to cover today. I have a couple additional resources, ic3.gov. It's actually, we're on the same page here, identitytheft.gov, and then the AARP resources. And as well, you can always call your local police department. They do want to know about the fraud. They do work fraud cases. Most, especially the larger local police departments have fraud divisions and departments with detectives in there. And we work closely with them as well. So please do report it. It helps a lot when we know what's going on out there.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you. This is just so very informative. We did have a couple of questions in the chat box. We have one person, oops, I just lost it because, excuse me, that had made a purchase online with their credit card, and then their bank contacted them about the purchase. Does that appear usually to be a fraudulent kind of transaction, a non-trustworthy, shall we say, vendor? Does anyone have experience with that, Mara?
I think we answered the question. It's important to, if you have a question, to call your bank directly. Make sure, and I think it was Janice who directed the person to make sure you're calling the company directly, and that number's on the back of your card. Never return a call from someone who just gives you a phone number to respond to. So those phishing attempts can happen, but it appears in this particular case that the woman should just, or the person should just call the bank directly. But yes, indeed, sometimes those are phishing opportunities for people.
Right.
While I have you guys, while I have the floor, the screen, Stephen put in this last slide, not just for senior citizens. I think we would all be remiss if we didn't say it's not just senior citizens who are getting scammed. In fact, the millennials, 18 to 31-year-olds get scammed the most. They don't lose the most money, but they get scammed the most. They are online more often than others. They are exposed to more opportunities. Youngsters get scammed, and indeed, 1 out of 50 babies, children, have their social security number compromised or stolen, identity theft. So the advice that I think we would all give you is, if you have a child, a grandchild, make sure that their credit reports are locked and frozen so that no one can steal their identity. Their identity, they won't know that there's a situation. You won't know there's a situation until that child turns 18 and they need to get a car, get a loan, etc., get a job. So the safest bet is to freeze your credit reports, and that goes for everybody. If you're not going to be using any credit or expecting to buy anything major, go ahead and freeze your accounts, and that goes for everybody in your family.
And so everyone knows part of what we're trying to do at AgeWise is, in fact, help prevent fraud and scams, because we vet all of our service providers. We check with the Secretary of State, we check licensing, we check reviews. We go through a pretty severe protocol to make sure that the people you connect with online through us for services are legitimate businesses. You never know, there's always someone that might slip in, right, folks? But we try very hard to make sure you're getting the best. Denise, you're nodding. Did you have something you wanted to share, Denise?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with everything that you said.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, AgeWise is also part of the Colorado Older Adult Financial Justice Coalition. And that's a new organization that has recently been formed very specifically to help with all of these issues. And let's see, it looks like there's another question in the chat.
I can respond to Sam
Okay.
regarding APS. You are accurate. Adult Protective Services is fundamentally, their core focus is the person's right to do what they want. So in the case that you're talking about, the 92-year-old widowed mother who's allowing her son, knowingly allowing her son to do these things, APS can certainly go talk to her. And it wouldn't hurt if you called and reported to APS that this situation's happening, though. And they probably will go and chat with her, but she has the right, unfortunately, to support her son who is stealing from her. A lot of young, 75% or more of the fraud against senior citizens has happened from a family member. It's called the early inheritance syndrome, where they think, well, I'm going to get it anyway. But, you know, you can call APS, let them know the situation. Somebody may very well have an opportunity to talk to her and let her think about it. But they can't force her to stop letting her son do that, unfortunately. I hope that answers your question.
I have another question. I have someone who had contacted me. They had a quote unquote friend contact them through Facebook, but it actually wasn't that friend. They went back and forth with the whole conversation, and it turned out alarms went off, and they called the actual friend and actually talked to them when this other person was going back and forth on Facebook in some kind of chat. I didn't know there was a chat in Facebook. Is that a usual thing that happens question to any of you?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that one. One of the most common ones that we see when someone, so oftentimes when this happens, it is a scam where the scammer has either hijacked or mimicked an account of someone who exists. And so what they'll do is take their name, their background photo, their profile photo, create an account that looks very similar to the account that exists. Oftentimes that account doesn't have privacy settings locked down, that type of a thing, so they can see all of their friends. And then what that person does is go and reach out to all of that person's all those people's contacts, and they'll send them a direct message or a messenger message that says something to the effect of they received some type of a grant or financial assistance. Most of the time it's a government grant or other type of grant, and they're saying, hey, I got this government grant, and it was for $70,000, and all you have to do is go to this link, pay them with gift cards, $2,000 or $3,000, and then you're going to get this grant. And because the person believes they're talking to their friend or family member, that type of a thing, that it's coming from a reputable source. So it's a very tricky scam. We've seen kind of a run of them recently in terms of reports to our helpline about government grant scams too. That's one of the main ways that scammers are trying to get people to convince them they should give money as part of one of these scams, is by posing as their friends or family member who would normally be a trusted source. So if you ever get a message like that, contact the person directly outside of that channel. And you're probably going to find out that they are, that a handful of their friends are probably getting these messages as well. And so be sure to let that person know who's being impersonated, because again, chances are whoever that person is reaching out to all of their contacts, and they don't want all their friends to be victimized by this type of a scam.
Thank you, Mark. Something else that was in the chat, and Mauro, you responded to this. When you freeze your credit report, when you freeze that, it does not affect your rating. And everyone should know that so you can protect yourself. Good information. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? How often should you change your passwords? Who wants to go for that one? I'd say often, but
As often as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a good rule of thumb is every like 3 to 6 months, at least that's what we say at Zing. If not more often.
And I think the crucial moments too are if a lot of times now you might get an email that your data was compromised. So a company might email you and say, hey, your username and password and email account were exposed and might be available on the dark web. And that is you need to change it at that time as well.
And also passwords are great, but think about the other kind of tools that are out there. So having a strong password is like one important detail as part of this kind of the amount of things that are going on. But think about using other types of tools, like other biometric tools, like using your fingerprint and facial recognition, those types of things as well. But also engaging with two-factor authentication for different, especially accounts that are critical, like your bank accounts and other types of accounts that have your personal and financial information, retirement accounts, different types of financial accounts. Make sure you take advantage of that two-factor authentication. I know sometimes it feels like a pain in the butt, but again, it's just another level of security that is important to be using when, in addition to those strong passwords.
And following up on what Mark just said, things being a pain in the neck, that don't save your credit card on Amazon or anything. Even if you use Amazon all the time, don't save your credit card in there. Take 3 minutes and input your credit card separately, because if it gets compromised, if that company gets compromised, your credit card is compromised. The way around that is to not save it on the company's website. And while I'm at it, clicking on anything, and this is what happens to younger folks when they see an ad for, oh, those Ray-Bans are free or they're cheap or something, and they're on social media and they click on the social media ad. don't do that. If you see something that you like, see where they're saying they're from, and then go to another tab on your website and go there directly and look for that. I long ago, before I worked here, I ended up buying my daughter 2 prom dresses, because I clicked on an ad on Facebook or something and never got it, but at least nothing was stolen. So know that you shouldn't be buying through a social media site. And the one that gets me is stop playing those games on social media. When somebody posts something and says, give the name of your first grade teacher and the first street you lived on, and et cetera, et cetera. What that is a type of phishing. They're trying to pull information so that they can come up with your passwords. So, and not only that, but a scammer can aggregate all those people who are playing. That is a frightening person that's walking behind you, Mark. But they're aggregating, so they're seeing who plays those games. So don't do that. It may look fun, and if you here's a story about depression, and if you believe in depression, copy this entire email and post that on your Facebook. That's another way of scam integration. Don't do that. No reposting your post to Facebook that you won't support their algorithm. That's a bunch of hooey as well.
So is it safe to save your passwords on the computer to go into sites you use fairly regularly?
Steve, you want to take it?
Sure. It can be, but it's also compromisable, right? So especially if you lose your computer, if someone takes your computer, if you leave your computer unlocked at a coffee shop and go to the bathroom and somebody's able to quickly get on, they can access your bank account if you've saved. So typically, maybe don't, but we all know it's challenging to have to remember all these passwords and do all that. So, take the best route you can. Putting a sticky note under your keyboard is the worst route. So do something better than that, right?
So is it better to use your fingerprint? Is that safer?
Typically, yes, that's going to be harder for someone to compromise.
It cannot be copied somehow from that wonderful technology out there.
We're not seeing that.
We're not
right?
there yet.
No.
Well, we're at the end of our time. I want to thank all of you. For our attendees, you can go online probably in about a week and a half, because the person that does the editing is out of town right now. But we will post this webinar on our website. I put in the chat a link so that you can read articles. We have many different articles on frauds and scams and contacts if you've experienced something negative. And Janice, thank you so much for hosting this. Do you have any last words?
I just want to thank you, Barbara, AgeWise, Mark, Mauro, Stephen. Thank you guys so much for joining in and talking to our members about how to stay safe with scams and fraud. I really appreciate y'all taking some time out of your Monday morning to talk to us. But hopefully we can do another webinar like this in the near future. But once again, if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to reach out to myself or Barbara or any one of our guest speakers today. I'm sure everybody will be very happy to help out as much as we can. But once again, thank you all for attending. Barbara will get this over to everybody here shortly in about a week or so. But I hope you have a good rest of your week and stay safe, and let us know if you need any more information.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank y'all.
Bye.
Thanks for
Bye.
having us. Take care.